first, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello and welcome to Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Appreciate you joining us wherever you are. Thanks for being here. We're live every weekday at 1 p.m. Pacific. And today we're talking about something that if you're in the state of Oregon, you probably are aware of. But in case you're not, if you have an Oregon DMV issued identification card of any kind, there's a good chance that your personal information has been compromised as part of a global data breach. This is information we got yesterday that came out. Apparently the DMV knew before that. We're finding out exactly what happened, what information could have been released out there. We know that at least 3.5 million people could have been compromised. But what comes next? All those are questions that we have and more. And to help us do that, we've got Greg Pepper right now from Checkpoint joining us. And Greg, always appreciate you having you on here to talk about this, because I know you can help make sense of this, or at least explain what's going on. And maybe to start off, can you talk about this specific data breach? Because I know it's beyond just even the state of Oregon, but what really happened here?
Yeah, many companies use this software, and thank you for having me once again. Part of the challenge is this software is used on a regular basis to move information around. And whether it's DMV or banks or healthcare companies, they're using this software to get our information across their vast global infrastructure. The challenge is a lot of times this is overly accessible. It is not necessarily up to date in terms of patching, and hackers are able to exploit vulnerabilities in the software, both to bypass gaining access to information or even potentially planting their own malware and backdoors into company systems.
And so this is the Move It file system. Is that what it is? Move It is used to move massive amounts of files. And that's what the DMV or ODOT was using here. So how does that information get compromised? How is somebody able to even get into that?
Well, there's a few ways in which they're gaining access to it. One, in that it's exposed in a way that's not properly protected and is not limited in terms of who can access the software. The second is that it may be limited, but it's exploited in certain ways. So it may be used to move certain types of information, but when sent carefully crafted SQL or other configuration elements, they're able to actually exfiltrate information rather than moving the legitimate information. The third possible area in which organizations are breached via this software is when legitimate files come in, but they have illegitimate payloads attached to them. And this is the potential malware that installs these backdoors and botnets that give hackers remote access and connectivity to a vast variety of networks, potentially in this case, including Oregon DMV.
Shouldn't there have been some kind of protection from keeping that happening, or keeping that from happening, rather, when you're moving these files? Is there any kind of security protocol with that?
Yeah, I mean, there are many things that can be done. Whether or not any of them were done is to be determined. Yeah. But unfortunately, many organizations which defer towards keeping systems up for availability and not being overly secure and locking them down. But what we're finding is that there's so many software utilities that are deployed. SolarWinds was one, Move It IT is now another, where they have vulnerabilities. Hackers can identify and exploit these vulnerabilities faster than we can keep up to both protect the systems and patch and remediate the flaws.
So one question I know a lot of people are having, including myself as a person whose data may have been compromised, is the DMV is really not, or I should say ODOT rather, is really not released much information as far as what could have been breached, what personal information is out there. They just said that, yeah, personal information could be compromised. But why would they not be able to tell us more details on exactly what was potentially leaked?
Well, one, I don't think they want to potentially feed the attackers' efforts to verify that they've actually infected and obtained certain types of information. We don't know whether or not this is just a data extortion or whether there's been encryption. I think the fact that they've been a little quiet in terms of what they've been able to share potentially leads me to believe that the amount of information that was compromised was of a serious nature, and they're still trying to get their hands around both the technical remediation within the infrastructure, as well as what type of remediation may be available for people like you and myself, and whether that's credit monitoring services or things of that nature. These have been kind of common things that have been given out to consumers whose personally identifiable information has been compromised.
So there's a good chance they just don't know, rather than they're holding something back.
They're probably scrubbing all their systems to truly identify the attack surface, because they don't want to assume what it can and can't be. when these types of things happen, we somewhat have to assume the worst and then peel back every little nook and cranny to identify what has or has not been touched.
Looking at this, beyond what happened here in Oregon, I know that it's happening other places too. It sounds like the state of Louisiana just had this go on, and all other kinds of organizations. So, how big is this data breach? This specific one, or this line of data breaching?
Yeah, I mean, this company has thousands of customers that are name brands that use this across a variety of industries. So whether it's potential big banks, big governments, big healthcare, otherwise, some may have done a better job both in controlling access to the systems, patching, maintaining, putting in forth some of those preventative mechanisms which we've talked about. But for many of our organizations which are understaffed, under-budgeted, they often don't have the time, the tool, the funding to implement the potential preventative controls that would help alleviate the situation to some extent, or minimize, not alleviate it, I should say.
Right. Well, so now that it's happened, and I guess we're still getting information about what exactly has happened, just that things are compromised, what are the ramifications? Like, what happens next?
Well, I think for a lot of organizations, they have a long weekend of discovering whether or not they have these systems in their environment, whether or not they're potentially exposed to external threat actors, and how to potentially lock down those access, patch vulnerable systems, and then potentially do their own forensic analysis about what may have been going on inside of their networks and applications.
So a lot of people are sweating right now, basically trying to figure out if this happened to them as well. With this information, say it's out there, the hacker, whoever it is that got it, once they have that information, say that they've got all this personal info on everybody, what do they do with it next? What happens to that?
Well, this money is collateral for them, and whether they're trying to hold a ransomware to the organization, whether they're now trying to take this information and sell it on the dark web, there are people who are interested in purchasing personally identifiable information, and whether these are social security numbers, tax numbers, driver license ID numbers, right? These are things which threat actors can then potentially use to launch, false purchases on your behalf, potentially apply for credit cards on your behalf, maybe apply for a loan on your behalf, as an example. There's many things that could potentially happen with this information. Whether or not that's the actual outcome remains to be seen.
So say the information is out there and, like us, it could be out there in the wild right now. Somebody could have that. They could be doing those things, making purchases or whatever they want to do with that info. What do you do now as someone whose data could have been compromised?
Yeah. Well, hopefully many of us, whether our data has been compromised or not, are taking advantage of some of the credit monitoring services, right? These are things which are real-time watchdogs, looking at our social security numbers, looking at our financial transactions, and trying to help detect fraud early in the process, right? If not, it's probably worth going and looking at your credit report and seeing if someone's opened up a new account in the last day or week or month. And naturally, if anything that looks illegitimate on that, reach out to the various reporting agencies about those situations.
So actually go in and monitor it. And you would suggest that for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, these things continue to happen time and time again. Years ago, it was T-Mobile and Target, and right this year we've had others in situations of this nature. But our financial credit is such an important part of our livelihoods, whether they were businesses or individuals, right? And having real-time monitoring of that on a regular basis is probably a best practice, for all of us on a regular basis.
So something preventative, even just to begin with, because, yeah, like you mentioned, this is one hack, but there's so many other ones out there. There's going to be more. It will happen again. So preventative things like checking your credit, anything else that people can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially with critical bank accounts and other things like that, they have options to enable multi-factor authentication. So heaven forbid somebody was trying to impersonate and log into 401ks or banks, get that email alert, enable that SMS notification, get that text message with the secondary level of password authentication, and make sure that these are turned on for all of your critical financial services accounts.
From a global standpoint, looking at this particular hack, we know there's going to be more. What's being done to try to prevent this? And I know you work on this type of thing. Checkpoint does. What's being done to try to get ahead of some of these organizations that are doing this?
Well, in terms of the bad actors, or in terms of what we're all now needing to do to respond and help prevent and mitigate these attacks?
I guess both of those things. What are the bad actors doing right now, and what are the good actors doing to try to get ahead of them?
Well, the cost of defense is always much greater than the cost of offense, and this is the challenge that we all face. And whether it's CISA alerting national, federal, state agencies to look for various attacks, lock down certain systems. I mean, these are some of the things that on an IT side are being proactively enabled now, or maybe reactively enabled now. I think in parallel, there are certain elements of law enforcement that are both monitoring these types of activities and hunting down these cyber criminals. As we all know, many of these cyber criminals are acting from various nation states where we don't have favorable relations, and they're not as always interested in tracking down these illegal actors themselves. And in some cases, they're actually sponsoring the illegal activities.
So there's a lot of people out there going after this. And on your side of things, like you said, it's defense is harder than offense. What do you do to go out there and kind of research this, find out what's happening? I'm sure you have to stay at the forefront of all of these hacks that are going on worldwide.
Absolutely. I mean, luckily, I'm one of 5,000 plus hardworking, intelligent people here at Checkpoint that are working in a variety of roles to proactively research these threats, figure out how to defend against these, develop technologies that customers can help implement to help prevent and mitigate some of these attacks. And that's where I kind of live within our organization. But I think, like all of us, it's really about understanding that the moment we connect our systems to the internet, there are inherent risks. And regardless of whether you're Checkpoint, KPTV, or Oregon DMV, we all have to do our best practices and due diligence to help secure these systems all the time.
So we all have to be actively participating in this.
Absolutely, absolutely. We don't know if this was an individual that was targeted or if the software itself, but we've seen time and time again that individuals are easy attack paths for hackers to get into companies as well.
Well, Greg, appreciate you joining us here to break this down and try to make it make sense a little bit more. As always, appreciate your input, and thanks for being here on Fox 12 Now.
Thanks for having me. I think we'll be talking again some point soon.
I think we will be. Yes, we definitely will. All right, thanks, Greg.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
All right, so Greg Pepper there, breaking it down. Yeah, so if you are one of these people that either here in Oregon or another state or another organization, as he said, check your credit, monitor that, and we'll do the best we can. We all have to be active participants in this because we're still getting information on even what was hacked and finding out more. This is, again, Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Appreciate all of you joining us. So if you're watching on YouTube, hello. If you're watching on one of our apps, fantastic. Those are different options you can find. Of course, the website. We're here live every weekday at 1 p.m. and we have all kinds of content that goes on throughout the day. So I'm going to take a break. We're going to log off here for a minute, but we're going to be right back. At 1:30 p.m., Will Metzold, one of our reporters here, is going to come on and talk about his research into the declining population of Portland. This is a big concern for a lot of reasons. We're going to get a little bit better understanding of what's going on and then talk about perhaps why that's happening, the ramifications, all of that. So certainly join us right back here at 1:30. Thanks for watching. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.